Greetings and welcome to the Maine Question podcast. I'm your host, Ron Lisnet. In this episode, we turn our attention skyward for a big event that's coming up in April. Now, on the slim chance you haven't heard about it yet, a total solar eclipse is taking place on April 8th, and the state of Maine happens to be one of the best places in the world to witness this event. Thousands of folks are coming from all over to experience this phenomenon, flocking to places like Jackman and Houlton. At UMaine's Versant Power Astronomy Center, they've been preparing for the eclipse for a very long time. Director Shawn Laatsch and his team are coordinating viewings and recordings at 35 different sites. They'll be able to collect some valuable data on, among other things, the sun's corona, which will be visible around the outline of the moon blocking the sun. We'll talk to Shawn and his grad student Nikita about the excitement in the astronomy community surrounding this event. Beyond that, we'll delve into the reasons why they and so many other people hold this fascination with the universe beyond our planet, and why it's such a great time to be a person interested in all things celestial. Plus, we'll discuss how you can experience the eclipse yourself. In this episode of The Maine Question, we explore the final frontier. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. It's an exciting time. I'm sure you guys are in high demand these days. We have Shawn Laatsch, director of the Versant Power Astronomy Center, Nikita Saini, who's a PhD student in, what's your area?
Physics, but my concentration is astronomy.
Okay. Exoplanets, right?
Yes.
Okay, what is an exoplanet?
Any planet outside our solar system is just called an exoplanet. So out of the 8 planets we have, including us, and then also not including Pluto, Ceres, and like the dwarf planets. Anything outside of that is an exoplanet.
Before we get into the specifics about the eclipse and the Astronomy Center, we want to talk about that. Just curious, we're always trying to find out what motivates people, what leads them down certain paths. So go back, if you would, your earliest memory of looking up in the sky and deciding, wow, I want to know more about what's up there. Do you recall that?
For me, yes. My grandfather, when I was a child, probably around 6 or 7, showed me the Big Dipper and Little Dipper in the sky, which were the only 2 constellations he knew. But he, showed those to me, and that kind of sparked my interest. And then I did visit a planetarium as a second grader in our local school system, and that kind of got me hooked. And I started reading books and just knew that it was what I wanted to do from then on.
Off you went, right?
Yep.
How about for you? What's your earliest memory of looking up and saying, I want to know more about what's up there?
Well, I come from like a very light polluted area, so it was like not possible to see stars. For me, getting into astronomy was when the Columbia space shuttle exploded.
Wow. In
the sky. One of the astronauts on the shuttle was she was Indian, and her hometown is like 2 hours away from mine. So we had day-long reports of what happened, and it just kind of seemed like, oh, that seems cool. Maybe I could do that when I grow up. And it's and after that, every time we would study anything astronomy related in school, that would just get me really excited. So I was maybe this is just I want to do.
Right. And how did you both decide to pursue the passion? When did you realize that this is what I'm going to do with my life? I'm not just interested in this.
Well, for me, after visiting the planetarium as a second grader, I really felt like I wanted to do it. I started reading books on it and things like that. But I went back to that same high school as a freshman, and I started teasing the person who ran the planetarium. I said, I want to do this. And so he let me started shadowing him, and so from age 14. So September of this year, I'll have been doing planetarium things for 40 years. So
wow.
Time flies.
Yeah, I guess. Now, how about for you? What situation were you in when you said, okay, this is the path?
I guess that was the day that I just want to be in astronomy. But I guess I was okay in school. So my parents were yeah, if you want to do that, sure, you can do it. But yeah, that was pretty much it. But yeah, I still look up to her. Name's Kalpana Chawla, but I still look up to her. That was really impressive for what she did back in the day, especially being a woman in India and making it happen. Yeah. So that was
well, we're going to get into the eclipse here in just a little bit, but first let's talk about the Versant Power Astronomy Center. Mm-hmm. Mission, programming, who shows up? Just give us the thumbnail.
Sure. Well, yeah, the Versant Power Astronomy Center and Jordan Planetarium. The planetarium actually is going to turn 70 years old this October. It was one of the first 9 university planetariums in the United States. But our center basically serves, the public, K-12 schools and the universities. So we sort of serve a little bit of everything. We do regular public programs Friday nights at 7. Sunday afternoons we have family programs for children. We have entertainment programs. Lots of K-12 school groups, of course, come through. We serve a number of university classes, including undergraduate astronomy classes. And of course, the modern planetarium, I tell folks, is sort of a digital visualization theater. So we can really visualize everything from the microscopic all the way to, the macroscopic, and all the way out to sort of the edge of the universe. And planetariums have changed greatly in the recent years, particularly in the last 20 years, where they've went digital, allowing us to do, a lot more than the classic planetarium that I grew up with, which was just the stars. Now we can take you to, the surface of Mars, or we can take you out to galaxies, or fly you to a black hole, or into to an exoplanet, or things like that. So, or explore the cell, or explore viruses. So we've done lots of different science lectures with folks on campus where they can use it to visualize their data. So it's really a unique place in that regard. But its mission is to really, hopefully inspire everyone to, spend some time understanding the universe in which they live.
So the dome is sort of a 3D screen. And so, to your point, I mean, you can go out into the stars, but you can also go inward into a cell or a molecule or that kind of thing. It's basically a way to view something that you can't see with the naked eye at a much more intense level. Is that?
Yeah, it's sort of, like I say, it's sort of a science visualization, theater, if you will. So we can really take you, inside things that you might not be able to understand, or out to things that you might not be able to travel to. So yeah, it does allow us to visualize science in a variety of ways, and the whole purpose of that is really to help people understand. I tell folks, first and foremost, I'm not a research astronomer. I'm an astronomy educator. I can take what I like to take what research astronomers do and be able to communicate it to the public on a very broad level and help them understand what it's about. And of course, we also can explore other topics as well, but of course, astronomy is my passion, and that's probably my key strength in that area.
Upcoming total solar eclipse. How big a deal is this?
Wow, I'm on scale wise, like what I've heard is it's gonna be like a huge deal. Again, like the first time I saw it was last year when we traveled to Australia. And we were kind of in a resort, so I didn't really see how busy it was. But even like the day after, later in the same day, the town was like still like really full. But I'm guessing there's gonna be many more people, just given how we're mostly on the mainland this time compared to Australia. We were kind of in a very remote area of Australia, but even then it was like busy. So I'm guessing like even like Maine's gonna be like remote. It's just remote, but it's gonna be a huge deal. But again, this is gonna be the second time and a longer time that I get to see the eclipse. So just like remembering what it was to like see the first time, how beautiful it was, I'm like pretty excited to like see it again and just getting a little bit longer time to see it again.
How many different kinds of eclipses are there, and just what exactly happens during an eclipse, particularly this one?
Yeah, so during a total solar eclipse, basically the moon is passing between us and the sun and blocking out the sun from our view, and basically that if you're inside that deepest umbral shadow, that's when you see a total solar eclipse. Maine hasn't had one since last time we had one was in 1963. If you miss this one here in Maine, you have to wait till 2079 before you have a chance to see totality here in the state again. Now, there's, of course, in terms of types of eclipse, you have a total solar eclipse, and that's if you're inside that deepest, darkest shadow, that's where you see, again, the sun completely blocked out. You see the corona, or the atmosphere of the sun. That's the only time we can see that, and it helps us study the solar wind and a variety of space weather. There's also partial eclipses. If you're on either side of that path of totality, you get a partial eclipse, which is not the same thing. Lots of different analogies, but two I really like is one that, you know, if the difference between seeing a partial and a total is the difference between seeing a lightning bug and getting hit by lightning. Or a good analogy that I heard the other day that I really like a lot was flying on a plane does not prepare you for jumping out of a plane. And, you know, a total solar eclipse would be like that. It really is one of the most dramatic things you'll see in all of nature. The sky will get dark, not dark as night, but twilighty all around the horizon. You'll see brighter stars and planets. The temperature will drop. The winds will die down. Birds and animals pay attention. It really is an eerie thing. And the first time most people experience it, they do get a sense of why ancient people feared these things and thought they were, you know, the end of the world was happening. So they really are dramatic. Partials, of course, back in 2017, there was a total solar eclipse that crossed the entire United States as well, but we were only in the partial zone for that. You know, and like I say, it's huge. And I'm telling folks, don't stay in Bangor or Orono or Old Town or VZ because you will only see a partial. And even if you're at 99.9%, it's not the same as being inside that path of totality. That's the only time you'll see that corona. So even if you can get to Lincoln or Dover Foxcroft or Milo, you can still get into the path of totality and at least see some of it. The best places are going to be Jackman, Houlton, Patton, places like that, which are right along that center line. They're going to get about 3 minutes and 28 seconds of totality. We also have lunar eclipses. Our next one for that is going to be in March of next year. Lunar eclipse happens when the moon passes through the Earth's shadow. For those, half of the Earth sees it at a time. And the eclipse can last, you know, for totality can last over an hour, where during a solar eclipse, it can only last up to anywhere from a few seconds up to 7 minutes or so. So most people see several lunar eclipses during their lifetime, but are lucky if they see 1 or 2 total solar eclipses, unless they're willing to travel. Because again, you have to be inside that shadow path, which is a few thousand miles long, but it's usually only 100 to 150 miles wide.
Right. So talk about the effort being coordinated to capture this event. What's the goal? How's that being done? And what is Versant's role in this?
So we are part of a group called CATE 2024, which is Continental American Telescopic Eclipse. And the goal of the project is to collect polarity data on the corona of the sun. And we're sort of the Northeast regional coordinators and Northeast regional trainer. There'll be 35 stations set up between Texas and Maine to collect this data during totality. And so we actually trained the groups both in Maine, but also I went down to New Hampshire to train the New Hampshire and Vermont groups. We're, you know, this is a citizen science project that is coordinated by NASA and NSF to gather data on the sun. And ideally, if our sites are all clear, we'll end up making a movie of the change in the corona, and that movie could be up to or even a little bit over an hour long if we get clear skies in all locations. And that will give us an understanding of how, you know, again, that solar wind and a little bit about how the corona, the solar atmosphere works.
So pray for clear skies
yes.
on April 8th in the afternoon, right. Nikita, for the average person that wants to experience the eclipse, what's the best, safest way to do that?
For the eclipse, well, for partial phases, you should always like wear eclipse glasses or have like safety. So, I mean, the easiest way is like get a solar eclipse glasses, but then the safest way is just to use a projection kind of material that you can like make out of like cardboard boxes, cereal boxes. That way you don't have to look at the sun, so you don't have to worry about damaging your eyes. But if you can get like solar eclipse glasses, or like sometimes they're like cards with like solar filters in front of it, that's like the best way to like look at it for the partial phases. But when the sun is completely blocked out by the sun, then it's like safe to look at totality, and you should look at the totality when it's happening, because you won't be able to see it with the eclipse glasses because it's going to be completely blocked out. The sun is already blocked out, so no light is coming from it. So at that point it's safe because the moon is covering out all the harmful part that you should not be looking at. So yeah, just to kind of emphasize on it. Only during totality it is safe without glasses, otherwise at all times.
We have them at the planetarium. There's other places you can get them. Solar eclipse glasses are different than sunglasses. I always tell folks they block out 99.9% of the incoming light of the sun. You want to look for ones that have the ISO certification on the back. You can use welder's glasses if they're number 14 or higher. Is another way to do that as well. But again, sunglasses don't work because sunglasses protect you from glare so that you can see when driving or doing a sporting event or fishing or something like that. But the solar eclipse glasses really block out. If you try to look at anything else, you won't see anything because again they block out 99%.
Not even expensive polarized glasses; those are still not.
Yeah,
good.
right. Yep. So it is one of those things that you do want the proper, protection for your eyes because again, the thing with it is as well is the sun is no more powerful on a day of an eclipse. That's the other thing. It's just that people want to see what's going on, so they tend to stare at it, and your eye doesn't have pain receptors, so it can burn the retinas without you feeling it. That's why it's dangerous to do so. So it's never safe to look at the sun for any length of time. It's one thing to glance at it, but to stare at it, then you're taking a risk with your eyes.
So this is not only a big scientific event, but for some towns in Maine, you mentioned Houlton, Jackman, places like that. This is a big deal. There's going to be a lot of people showing up in Jackman where you're going to be with your team. What does it mean for these communities, do you think?
Yeah, I think, it's a big economic boom for the state as well. Eclipses typically are. Houlton is doing a huge 3-day festival around the eclipse up there. Jackman, their hotels are booked out or have been booked out for over a year, and I think Houlton's as well, pretty close to that. So yeah, places that are on the path of totality, it is a big deal because typically there is a huge influx of people because again there's this tiny area of land where you're going to be inside that deepest darkest umbral shadow and get to see totality, and for those places it does bring an economic boom. It's been sort of estimated at somewhere between roughly 20 to 40,000 people from outside of Maine will be entering Maine to try to do eclipse viewing, not to mention all the people in Maine who will be traveling to these areas. This particular one passes mainly over forested areas, not really populous areas. So again, these towns that are on the path are going to get a whole bunch of economic, from hotels to their restaurants to just general commerce. It'll be a pretty big economic boom for the state as a whole, and the Maine Department of Tourism has been, also talking it up too. So it's going to be a big deal.
For anybody interested in space and just curious about what's out there, this has to be the golden age right now. You're talking about the James Webb Telescope, possible Mars missions, the Artemis program. Do you guys feel that excitement? What excites you the most about everything that's going on with space right now?
Oh boy, for me, I think that's kind of hard because there are so many things. I really do like like the James Webb Space Telescope and just the things that it has been discovering and giving us this whole new view on the universe. And I do tend to, I really do like, like the planetary missions as well, like missions to Mars or Jupiter or any of the other planets. While I think human spaceflight is cool, I also think that it comes at a pretty great cost comparatively to the science you get back for robotic missions. So I'm a big fan of, that being said, I am excited for Artemis, particularly the Artemis 3, which might have Jessica Meir from Maine on board. Right. That would be really spectacular, but I'm primarily excited about sort of the robotic missions and the ones that really give us a lot of science back. Those are the ones that for me are most exciting, and obviously the eclipse. I mean, it's one of those things. I've had a chance to see 5 total eclipses during my lifetime. Each one is different and unique, and so looking forward to hopefully bagging number 6, you might say, right, if the weather cooperates. But yeah, it's a great time to be in the sciences in general, and yeah, the new technologies have really pushed astronomy in a huge way.
Right. Artemis is, just so we know, that's going to land a crew on the moon for the first time in more than 50 years, right?
Right. Artemis 3 will,
Artemis
yeah.
3.
So Artemis 1 was a mission that was sort of a test that went up last year. And then Artemis 2, they're hoping in another, probably late next year or so. The plan for that one is that it will be sort of like Apollo 8. It will fly out past the moon and then return to Earth basically with a human or crewed test, if you will, of both the SLS and the Orion capsule. And then Artemis 3, which is the one that, like I say, we're kind of hoping Jessica Meir will be on, is slated to land on the moon. Probably late 2026 is right now roughly the timeline for that.
Right. And Jessica is the Caribou native that has flown missions before, right?
Right. She's the one who did the first all-female spacewalk, of course, and spent a bunch of time on the International Space Station. Yep.
Talk about the data that you're going to get from the Eclipse. Is that going to be used at Versant? I mean, how is that data going to be used? Just to study the corona for one, right?
Yeah, at Versant, I mean, we're gonna obviously gonna show people the images that we take, but like it is like a science project, so, and it's like NASA funded to do the science. So once we get the data, like what Shawn was talking about, like getting that hour-long movie, that is gonna help us see how the corona is evolving over the hour, how the prominences are changing, and stuff like that. Once we analyze that data, which by itself is gonna take a little bit of time. Science is slow, but I mean, once you get results, they're huge. But yeah, they're definitely we have science goals for the project. I mean, definitely the major part of it being a citizen science project, but there are science goals, and we need and one of the science goals is just to get the polarization data of the corona. So this we'll just have to wait to see what happens. Maybe sun will just give us something amazing. We can see something really cool in that hour-long movie that we get.
Great. Talk about the Versant Center and how does it get used here on campus for classes and research? It's, like you said, I mean, there's a lot of interaction that goes on just with undergrads studying and graduate students as well.
Yeah, so of course, for undergrads, astronomy 110 labs are at the planetarium. Both in the planetarium, they also use the telescopes out back. We do have both a telescope for public observations called the Clark Telescope, which they get to use in their labs. We also use that for public observing on Friday nights after our regular shows. And then we have a research telescope as well that undergrad students and grad students have a chance to use for research projects. We even had a high school student use that and won a scholarship to Maine some years ago. Yeah, so one of the, obviously the classes like astronomy get to use it, but then we've had, classes from ecology and environmental science or climate science come and use it because we can show the Earth and do things with that. We've had science lecture series where some of the folks in a variety of sciences here, anywhere from marine science to engineering, have presented in the planetarium about their work, both for their students and for the general public in a lot of cases. And then beyond science, we've had a university theater department play in the planetarium. We did Constellations a few years ago, and this past year we did with True North Theater, we did a live play in the dome. So you can use that space in a variety of different ways. We've had musical concerts. In fact, we just did something with the BSO this past Friday as well. So we really try to use it in a wide variety of ways. And for the university, of course, it's a resource both for classes, but also for communication of what they're doing to the broader public as well. And we're always open to collaborations and using it in new ways. That's one of the things that I really enjoy about the job, is that it has all these interesting, sort of connections, whether we're working with, musicians, or whether we're working with actors, or whether we're working with, scientists. It's always something new to experience and do.
So I'm going to put you guys on the spot right now. Obviously, the holy grail for space exploration is the possibility that there is life on another planet. Mm-hmm. Do you think it exists? And when or how might we learn about that?
Well, I definitely think it exists. The probability of just life not existing in the universe, I don't think that's possible. Just talking about probability, there's always a chance of something happening. It just might be really, really low. So given how vast the universe is, we know now, I mean, there's definitely life. It's just that we don't know what it looks like. It's just not like ours. And we don't understand life completely. No matter how much we do, it's still we're still years away, really understanding how life really works. And just given I do a little bit of like exoplanet like atmosphere stuff, not a lot. I just like mostly read about it, but that's not the side of exoplanets I do. But given where we are right now, I know we've like I think a lot of people have heard we found water vapors on other planets, or we know like diamonds rain on other planets and stuff like that. So we can look into the atmosphere. It's just that we can find different like chemicals or like compounds in the atmosphere. Again, we don't really know if that's enough to like produce life over there. So I know like this is something we're doing, and maybe in the next like 10-20 years we have a more definite answer of like maybe it's like something out of like even we cannot even like think about something that can like create life. But till then we just have to like keep working on the methods we have right now, just finding these little compounds and like molecules on other planets.
Shawn, what do you think?
Yeah, I sort of, there was a saying that, of course, if we're the only life here, it's a great waste of space, you might say. I mean, if you think of just the sheer number, there are 200 billion stars in our own Milky Way galaxy. We keep discovering other galaxies. Not to mention that we've discovered that most stars have exoplanets, so have planets beyond. So I think that definitely life is out there. The challenge, I think, is both the idea of us really fully understanding life is one thing, because we base it on what we know. We tend to think it's carbon-based, it must have water to be able to survive, but why not silicon? Look at what we can do with silicon chips. So could there be life based on that? We just don't know. So that's part of it, but also the other issue is distances. Space is really, really big, and there's a lot of it. So, if you think of, we talk about sending people to the moon, that's the farthest place we've been. That's 250,000 miles away, and that's close. That's the closest thing to us, beyond Earth. When you start to talk at the distances of stars, you're talking, light years. In other words, the speed of light for years. Proxima Centauri, which is part of the Alpha Centauri system, is 4.3 light years away. That means if you could travel at the speed of light, it would take you 4 years to get there, 4 years to get back. And, we don't have things that can move anywhere near that speed. The fastest thing that we've ever built will reach that distance in about 20,000 years. And that's the closest star. So again, the distances are really big. So I do think there's life out there. Has it visited Earth? No, I don't think that I don't think is realistic. And if it was that intelligent to make it all the way here, it wouldn't crash, nor would it need to probe you in a strange way to figure out how you work if it's that advanced. So I do think it's probably out there, but I think distances are the really big problem. And again, our understanding. Now, there are some missions in our own solar system that are going to be looking for life closer to home. We've been looking on Mars, and we haven't found that yet, but there are some thoughts that possibly there could be some life underneath some of the moons of Jupiter or Saturn, which have water underneath icy crusts. Because again, we start with what we understand, which is carbon-based life forms that need water. So possibly, maybe we'll find even life here in our own solar system. And we might find remnants on Mars, but it wouldn't be little green men. It would be probably microbes or something like that.
So what's next? What projects or missions have you most excited? What's on the horizon that really gets you guys up in the morning?
Well, I'm mostly like involved in like exoplanets, but I know like in the next 10-20 years, like the next big project is going to be trying to like develop like techniques to like directly image planets. We're doing some of that right now, but again, like to really like understand planets like even a little bit more, it would be better if we can like directly image them, so we can like clearly see them, guess their size, and maybe see a little bit of atmosphere, some color come through, and we can like infer a lot from that. So that is really exciting. But even with like what we currently have, it's just amazing of how we can like indirectly infer so much just from light. Like this is light coming in, and just the way we look at it, we can like tell so much about different stuff. That's just amazing.
Right.
But again, we have our eyes. We need to like see stuff to understand it better. So I guess that direct imaging of like planets is going to be like a really cool project that's coming up.
How about for you?
Yeah, for me, it's like I said, I really have been interested in things that the James Webb is doing, just to sort of map and get an idea of how big our universe truly is. And I think there's some, it's been discovering more galaxies than we ever thought, existed, and sort of pushing back some of those boundaries. And I think it's, going to be giving us an idea of how some of the first stars worked and how some of the first galaxies formed. And I think that really gets back to this whole idea of origins. I think the two big questions humans are always looking for are, where did we come from, and why, to some extent. And I think that's going to help us understand a bit more of that. There'll be future, space-based missions that'll give us a whole bunch of information too. But I think the Webb is a really, for me, is one of the big things right now. And we'll see where things go in the future. But one of the things I like about astronomy is that it's always changing, and there's always something new. So, now it's the eclipse, but, a few months from now it will be something else that's coming up, and things like that. I know for us at the planetarium, one of my next big projects is just thinking about the 70th anniversary. We want to do something really big for that, and hopefully push our technology to the next level for that event too. So that's kind of the next big project.
Favorite space-based TV show? Are you a Star Trek fan? One of the recent ones is For All Mankind, which I'm sure you're familiar with. Any favorites?
I am not a huge fan of like sci-fi in general, but I do like some good. Actually, I just watched Dune Part 2. Okay. This week, that was pretty good, and I guess like how they like show, like a I mean that. I don't know if you like heard, like Dune was the like where the idea of a lot of like Star Wars came from, like how an alien planet should be like, or how civilization should be like. So it's impressive of like what they're done with this movie. So I guess like not I've never seen like Star Trek, but I do like the Star Wars movies. I do like Dune. I do like a couple other not huge sci-fi movies, but like there are some shows and like some movies that I've liked. I kind of feel embarrassed. I do not watch Star Trek.
How about you, Shawn?
So, of course, I grew up, some of my first, I think that's the other thing, is one of my other first memories, other than my grandfather showing me the night sky, was my mom taking me to the original Star Wars movie, which came out in '77 when I was, 7 years old. So that was, I think, kind of got me interested. I think I've always enjoyed both Star Trek and Star Wars. Star Wars is more just pure fun in some ways, whereas Star Trek was much more science-based, if you will. And a lot of things that were predicted in Star Trek have come to light. We now carry these communicators in our pockets, which we know are cell phones, but that was an idea that was from Star Trek. And we're getting closer to having a true tricorder for looking at human bodies in terms of medical purposes to figure out what's wrong. So I think a lot of innovation that was sort of science fiction in Star Trek has come to light, of course. And and I do remember also as a kid in 2001, Space Odyssey 2 was pretty good, as well as in terms of science fiction. But yeah.
Do we use dilithium crystals for anything?
Yeah, not yet. We'll have to wait and see if we can figure that one out. But yeah, and the whole idea of being able to travel faster than light, even that, we're probably a long ways off from that. We do know about antimatter now, though, and things like that. It's just that to produce the sheer amounts of it, that's a big problem, of course. But yeah, I think that's one of the things. Science fiction is sort of a fun way to hopefully hook people into a little bit of the science, and definitely one of those things.
There's thing is, like, it came out a couple of years ago. There's a show on Netflix. It's called Lost in Space.
Yes.
I like that a lot. It's like the first few seasons are like really great. Where it's just Like
that's a remake of a show from the 60s.
Yes.
I remember.
I really like the new one. I had no idea about the old one. But it was pretty cool, like seeing how they imagine like different worlds happening and humans trying to inhabit other worlds. That was really cool.
Well, I know the big event with the eclipse coming up. You guys are excited about that. I think a lot of people are and enjoy that. And thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. You can find video versions of many of our episodes on UMaine's YouTube channel. Audio versions are available on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, and SoundCloud. Questions or comments? Get in touch with us at Maine Question at maine.edu. We'll catch you next time on the Maine Question.